spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I pay my respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples today. I'm joining you from Meanjin country and gratefully acknowledge the Yagara and Turrbal people. Welcome to Totally Lit, the podcast celebrating reading, writing and creating literature. I'm your host, Ky Garvey. Thank you for listening. This episode I have special guest Susan Midalia from the Australian Short Story Festival. The festival will be held in Fremantle, WA on the 22nd to the 24th of November. Not only will I be chatting with Susan, but I will also be doing a series of interviews with Short Story Festival panellists over the coming weeks. I hope you enjoy our chat. Susan Midalia, thank you so much for joining me on Totally Lit. I'm very excited for you to join me because we've got some exciting upcoming news to share with our listeners. I'd like to start out by introducing you as the director of the Australian Short Story Festival. Would you like to give me a bit of a snapshot of your background?
Certainly, and thank you for inviting me. Excuse my voice, I've got a touch of hay fever. I'm from Perth. Perth is the hay fever capital of the Southern Hemisphere, I think. So, yes, I'm the director of the Perth branch of the Australian Short Story Festival, which alternates between Perth and Adelaide. And there is a director of the Adelaide Short Story Festival, Anna Solding, who is a publisher. So I come from a background of writing. I have 3 short story collections to my name and a collection of microfiction. I've also published 2 novels. The short story as both a reader and a writer is my passion. So several years ago now, 7 years ago, a couple of publishers, so Anna Solding from Adelaide and Caroline Wood from Perth, decided they wanted to establish a short story festival because we feel, probably less so now, but we felt that the short story as a genre has typically been undervalued. It's seen as a kind of poor cousin to the novel and as a kind of apprenticeship to writing a novel before you write short stories before you go on to do the real thing. But these 2 publishers really wanted to celebrate the short story as a viable art form. So they established this festival, which alternates, as I said, between Perth and Adelaide. It's been going for 7 years now. This is the 8th year. Caroline Wood stepped away from the festival a few years ago, and I've taken her place. And we're very excited to be holding the festival again in Perth this year, in Fremantle to be exact, in November. We've got writers coming from all over Australia and one from overseas.
Oh, that's very exciting.
That's my background and that's my involvement. I also have a dedicated, hardworking, wonderful committee of 6 women, 5 of whom helped to organise the previous festival 2 years ago. And
So
it's all going well.
Practice.
Indeed,
for a smooth festival. So this year it's the 22nd and 24th of November in Fremantle.
The 22nd is workshop day. So we've got 6 workshops. Kate Kennedy, one of the best short story writers in Australia, is coming from Victoria to offer a workshop, and we have 5 local writers who are also doing workshops. And then Saturday and Sunday, the 23rd and 24th of November, we're having panel discussions, interviews. We have a gala opening night, and the weekend concludes with a fun-filled literary debate featuring kind of ruthlessly competitive short story writers versus novelists. So we're going to have a fun debate about novels versus short stories.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a great weekend. Now you've got some wonderful names. You've got Catherine McNamara, Eugene Bacon, John Kinsella, Kate Kennedy, as you've mentioned, Rashida Murphy, Laurie Steed, who I know is a WA writer.
That's right.
Caelan Murray. Is anyone you're looking forward to in particular?
Oh, well, I heard a number of those writers at the Adelaide Festival last year, and they're all wonderful. I mean, Catherine McNamara's latest collection, it's her 4th, The Carnal Fugues, was recently shortlisted for the prestigious Prime Minister's Award. So we're very excited to have Catherine. It's a fabulous collection. Laura Jean Mackay, who you might know from her novel, The Animals in That Country, She has
Yes.
a collection called Gunflower, which is also superb. So she's coming over.
Fantastic.
Um, yeah, John Kinsella, who, as I'm sure you know, is an internationally acclaimed writer. He's a resident of Western Australia, but he's got a new collection out. So we're very thrilled to have him. Um, we've got a number of Indigenous writers from mostly from Western Australia. Who else? Eugene Bacon, who's an award-winning, uh, mainly fantasy, sci-fi, speculative fiction. So she's fabulous. They're all wonderful speakers about their own work as well as great writers in their own right. Kate Kennedy, of course. Who else have we got? Lots of local writers actually, because part of the aim of the Short Story Festival is to have both established and emerging writers. It's a wonderful opportunity for emerging writers to meet and to network with established writers. We've had a number of publications come out of our festivals, which is great.
Very
And we're
exciting.
also committed to diversity. We have been from the outset, and I know sometimes that can sound like a cliche or just kind of going through the motions, but we are really committed to having writers from different backgrounds with diverse cultural, racial, sexual identities. And we've got a great mix of younger and older writers as well.
I know that it's so important to celebrate your local writing community. I'm based here in Brisbane and I have been really blessed to have come to such a vibrant writing community. But
Yep.
it's all supported by the activities of the community itself here in Brisbane. And I imagine it's the same in WA that you run events and have festivals like this to have that writing community thrive. How do you
Absolutely.
feel in terms of do you get the locals all coming along to the event to support it?
Oh, indeed. Yeah, it's a really important part of the festival that to support people who are just starting out on their writing careers. And I must say that the WA writing community is a very supportive one. You do hear stories sometimes of the kind of competitiveness and cliqueiness, I guess, of some in some places of writers' groups, but the community in Perth is just fabulously supportive of one another. We all celebrate one another's achievements. We read each other's work. We give feedback on each other's work. And the festival, the Short Story Festival, is just a great opportunity to, for young people, not even necessarily young people, the older people just starting out, to get an audience for a start,
Mm,
to promote their work, to sell their books, which is a really important part as well. So and some of them a few of them are really excited to the extent where they said, "You don't have to pay me, I'll come anyway."
just let me
Which
be
is
there.
really nice. But speaking of payment, we were successful in getting a very generous grant from the WA government, which
Fantastic.
we're thrilled about because it is a kind of affirmation of the success of the festival over a 7-year period. So
I
so
did
we'll be
bump
able to pay people properly.
into Anna recently at a book event here in Brisbane, and she said they got
Right.
the funding.
I know
So
it's
that was good
It,
news.
it's fabulous because it allows us to pay people properly.
Mm,
Artists, writers, and particularly short story writers they're so used to kind of doing things for free or for a very minimal rate, but we'll be able to pay them properly, which is wonderful. Yep.
fantastic. I got my beginnings in submitting to short story competitions, and so I'm very supportive of the whole genre because it's where you can find your feet and practice figuring out what your voice is and
Yep.
what genre is best for you. And yeah, it's just a great way to get started and then grow if you want. Though some authors stay short story writers their whole career, and you can establish yourself as a well-known author just with short stories.
Short
So
stories, that's right.
it's nothing
Well,
to sneeze at, that's for sure.
no, and I think in some ways it's more difficult to write a memorable short story than it is to write a novel because, well, for a number of reasons. I think the challenge is to combine kind of brevity and resonance, economy and evocation. Stylistically, you're really in the spotlight because I think readers will notice, I certainly do as a reader, they'll notice the odd stylistic glitch, and you can quickly lose faith in a writer if there's a cliche or a clunky sentence or whatever.
Mm.
Whereas if you're reading a novel, I think you tend to, there's no such thing as a perfect novel, but you tend to gloss over the odd glitch and you keep reading.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the aim for a short story, I think, is stylistic perfection, if there is such a thing. And I like to use myself as an example of a short story because I'm actually just under 5 feet. And I like to say, I don't know, I think that is in centimeters, but I like to say that a good short story is short, but it strives not to be superficial. And there's still, to some extent, this prevailing notion that short stories are easy to write. You can dash one off in an evening. But every short story writer I know says it's a lot of hard work. You can take a month to end up with a story that you're happy with.
It's
So,
definitely an art, and you can deliver so much power in a short
absolutely.
story as
Yeah.
well. That's I think the thing that struck me the most when I was writing shorter length stories was like I entered the Hunter Writers Centre Grieve competition, and they had a ceremony where they were reading the submissions out, and people were crying
Yeah.
and I was like, I wrote that. That those words have power. And seeing the effect that your words have on other people is really an amazing thing. Like it really changed the way I look at writing
Yeah.
and reading as well, because now when I'm reading pieces of work, I'm like, oh, okay, what was that person thinking? What's their motivation behind that? Whereas when I was younger and reading, I probably wasn't analyzing the work in the same
Sure.
way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it certainly writing short stories has certainly changed my life, and
Oh,
certainly
good.
having a festival like this, imagine all your attendees, the impact you'll be having on them as well, on the changes you can make in their lives.
Yeah, it is partly about intensity, certainly, and the fact that you can read it in one sitting and you can take in the whole. But I think a good short story, you can reread it and find something
Yes.
new every time. And I guess it's fundamentally about paying tribute to moments in time, and moments in time, far from being superficial, can be profound. They can haunt us for years. They can be,
Yes.
turning points or crises. Or so all the people who are coming to the festival, writers and audiences, we know how powerful, as you say, the short story can be. So we have readings as well, so people can actually hear the
Fantastic.
power
Will
of the
there be
story.
opportunities for writers to submit work to be read?
No, there won't be, not this time round, but we do have the festival is being partnered by Notre Dame University in Fremantle, and we have a number of students from the university who are going to be reading their creative work.
Amazing. That'll be a great
And
opportunity.
yeah, and they'll be with, some established writers as well, so that would be a real thrill for them. The other big name we have coming is, well, via Zoom. We couldn't afford the plane fare and the airfare, but we got via Zoom a writer called Karis Davies, who has 2 collections of short stories, and a few novels. Her latest, it's really like a novella or a long, long short story. It's called Clear, and it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. It's pitch perfect. It's one of those books where you wouldn't change a word.
Oh, that sounds
That's about the
thrilling.
Oh, it's
I'll have to check it
1840
out.
Scottish land clearances, so it's a historical piece, and
Mm,
honestly, it's just the most beautiful book. So we're very thrilled to be having Karis zooming in with us. That'll be fab, and she's got a
fantastic.
huge following. This book has been so popular. So I work in a bookshop part-time in Perth, and we hold the distinction of having sold more copies of that book than any other bookshop in Australia.
Wow.
So we're thrilled to bits. Yeah,
Lucky she's coming then.
I
You've
know.
had so many sales for her. So, for people who are wanting to come along to the festival, can you tell me where it will be held?
Yeah, so it's at Notre Dame University in
Mm.
Fremantle. Please come, hop on a train, drive over with your friends, sail a boat, whatever. I know Perth's a long way away, but it really is going to be a fabulous festival. They always are. The other lovely thing about it is because it's sort of small niche festival. It's not a big, splash like Adelaide or Sydney or whatever. It's quite intimate. So
Mm.
allows audience members to mix with the writers, sit down and have a chat to them. And it's all very friendly. The writers we've had in the past have commented, so many of them, they say this is the best writers' festival we've ever been to because it's inclusive, it's friendly, it's open, it's relaxed, and there's no kind of hierarchies. I'm sure there are the bigger names, if you like, but there's no sense that you sometimes get with writers' festivals of kind of the star attractions and no one else really matters. So writers love that about the festival, that everyone gets to meet everyone and just have a good time. Yeah.
And for people who'd like to check out the program or purchase tickets, where can they go to do
Okay,
that?
so the program will be finalised in about 2 weeks. We've started, promoting the festival, but if you go onto the Australian Short Story website in Make It 3 weeks, you'll be able to find a full program. We've got all sorts of, and the ticketing will be up by then as well. We're using
Fantastic.
Yep. We've got all sorts of wonderful topics. So one is called How Not to Write a Sex Scene. So like what it takes to write, good sex in a
It's a
story.
talent.
Oh yeah. Everything from, so we've got sessions about power. We've got one on self-publishing,
Mm-hmm.
one on an editing panel, got one on humor. I think I'm going to be in a session with Kate Kennedy, talking about writing over a long period of time. It's called Fine Wine, like a fine wine. So I didn't actually get my first collection published until I was in my 50s. And I like telling people that because it's never too late. Some people come to it later in life, but if you've been a reader all your life, that's the best start you can have, I think. So yeah, lots of interesting things happening.
Will any of your sessions be available to zoom into from alternate locations? So
We're working on that at the moment. I'm not sure whether it's going to be possible, but it's something I would really like to do. It was done during COVID at the Adelaide Festival, I think, where a lot of writers zoomed in. But in terms of making it available to audiences, we're working on that and hope to see what can happen. At the very least, perhaps record sessions for people to listen to.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd definitely be interested to be able to zoom in myself
Oh, why don't you
if
come
I
over?
can. I might have to grow wings and come over, but yeah, I'm definitely a passionate supporter of the short story and the short story festival. So you never know what might happen next.
Well,
Watch the
it's
space.
November. The weather will be glorious.
I
There's
haven't
wonderful beaches.
The last time I was in Perth, I was 14, so
Oh my
many,
goodness.
many years ago.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it
yeah,
was
so
lovely, so I would
it
love to
is.
come back.
It is. And as I say, the program should be up online on the Australian Short Story website in about 2 to 3 weeks, and bookings will
Fantastic.
be open. The other thing I wanted to say about the festival is we're keeping prices really low because we want to be inclusive, have as many people come as possible. Tickets for the whole day will be $25 to $30, which is
Oh,
a real
that's
bargain.
incredible.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a
yeah.
great
Yeah.
price.
We did that for the last festival and still managed to make money from ticket sales, which was fabulous.
Nice
But
work.
we just want to encourage as many people as possible to come
Yes,
because
everybody get your ticket, go to
yes,
Perth,
please do. It's worth the trip. It really is. Just pile a whole bunch of people into a car and drive across the
across
Nullarbor.
the Nullarbor. There we go. Thank you so much for your time, Susan. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Totally Lit is an independent podcast. You can help support us to continue to chat with wonderful Australian creatives by leaving a review on iTunes or sharing our socials with your friends. You can also make a contribution at www.buymeacoffee.com/totallylit. For those of you who know me, I'm kind of a caffeine addict, so you can keep me fueled with caffeine, and this will also help with equipment and podcasting platform fees. I love to interact with our listeners, so feel free to say hello either by email or social media. You can email me at totallylitpodcast@gmail.com or find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm everywhere. Have you checked out the Totally Lit Writing Community on Facebook? It's a group that provides a space to continue the conversation and share your writing successes, events, launches, and latest projects. Jump into the group and say hello. Thank you for listening to Totally Lit, and don't forget to go out into the world to read, write, create, ignite.